Hello, world. Dano here, stacking paper as always. Today we're doing a review and summary of Red Country by Joe Abercrombie. It's the sixth book in the First Law series, the third of the standalones. And I'm kind of just doing this one off the top of my head. I didn't really take that many notes for it because a lot of this narrative is informed by previous books. Like, first off, if you haven't read any of the First Law books up until this point, definitely don't listen to what I'm going to spoil full spoilers for everything up to this book, because of the three standalones, Best Served Cold, The Heroes, and this is the one that relies the most on you having read previous First Law novels, because a lot of the lore and the characters and everything is so tied into what's happened before. Like, Best Served Cold and The Heroes have a little bit of that, but I think you can read those ones, especially Best Served Cold. I would make an argument that could be the best First Law book to even read, because it's very, like, simple plot and doesn't rely that much on previous knowledge, whereas this one is completely reliant on it. So I'll start off by saying this is the weakest First Law novel. Not to say that it's bad. It's just the narrative is not the tightest, and it really, really fucking drags, especially in the middle. And also, the thing that First Law is most known for is having great characters. And there are some great characters in this book, but they're all characters that were in previous books. Like, they're only great because they were great before. A lot of the new characters are just kind of bland, like, especially Shy. So, I'm getting ahead of myself. So I'll start with a rating. I was going to give it a 7 out of 10 because, like, I did enjoy the book. I just have issues with it. I'm going to say it's like a 6.8. I'm going to go into decimals now. It's a 6.8. So yeah. The plot is essentially, you have Shy, who's this 20-year-old woman. She comes back to her farm one day to find that it's all burned down, and her younger brother and sister, Rowan and Pitt, are just missing. And it's just their trek across, the Old West to get her children back. It's literally a Western story, and you can tell that Joe Abercrombie, I'll start off with some positives. I think it's extremely impressive that he was able to fit literally every single Western trope into a fantasy story and into his world. And I really mean every single trope. The outlaw town, the scout, and, like, the native turned good, I guess. Like, duo, the duel at high noon, basically the Alamo, like the last stand in a building, the Wells Fargo-esque bank heist horse chase, where you have a bunch of horses pulling a fucking wagon full of money, and outlaws on horses trying to take you down while you fight on top of a moving wagon. Like, everything you can think of that is in a Western story is in this story. And he makes it work with the narrative, which is pretty impressive. The other big thing is the world building is the best part of this book. There's a lot of good lore built up around, especially, like, the Magi and Canadius the Maker. A lot of stuff that is only, like, briefly touched on in the original trilogy kind of gets brought up with the dragon people in this one, which I thought was really cool. And then, of course, you have some, like, amazing returning characters. Nikomo Kosuka, literally probably the best character in all of First Law. Maybe not the best, but one of the most entertaining characters. Big spoiler, you have the return of Logan Ninefingers, which I'm going to get to him at the end, because I have really mixed feelings about him being back. I love the character, obviously, but I just felt like, okay, I'm gonna get to him at the end. You have Carlet Dan Eater, who I really did not see coming back, and you don't even know it's her. I actually had to look up on the wiki to see who it was, because she's the mayor of a town. Any of the returning, like, main characters, they never actually name them. So, like, they don't actually name Logan, but you know it's Logan because he's missing a finger and he has berserker rage. And in Scarlet Dan Eater, they don't name her, but you know it's her via context clues. So anyway, I'll wrap it back to the beginning. So the main story is you have Lamb, who is actually Logan, Shy, and Leaf, who is another kid they met along the way, on their journey across the West to get their brother and sister back, and Leaf is also trying to get his younger brother back. Because there's a guy who's just capturing children and selling them to the Dragon People. Who are the Dragon People? The Dragon People are acolytes of the Maker, who was the Canadius, one of the original Magi. And they've kind of just been keeping his teachings going for like hundreds of years, and they've lived up in these mountains. But they live in these volcanic mountains, so they're infertile. So that's why they have to literally kidnap children. But the twist is that they're actually kind of giving these children a better life, even though it's like, yeah, it's terrible that they're kidnapping them and they get ripped away from their parents. But when they start teaching them and showing them, you know, how to craft stuff with their hands and make their tools and follow all these rituals, it's very like native-esque, but they actually have technology, like cool technology, and they actually show them a better life. It's just the way they go about it is bad. It's a hallmark of First Law is there is no good characters. Everyone is doing what they think is right, but they're willing to do bad things to get those things. So you have good guys who kind of are bad, and you have bad guys who kind of are good. So they're going across the country. They meet Dab Sweet and his ghost wife, lover, I guess you could say. The ghosts are another group of natives. They're like the classic, like, you know, cowboys and Indians natives, where they massacre people who are going across the plains and cut off their ears. But they meet them, and they invite them to their fellowship, this massive group of people that's moving across the plains together. After seeing Lamb brutally murder 2 guys and almost hang a third one, these are guys that are part of this group that captured these kids. And this is where you realize that Lamb is actually Logan, because he has this berserker rage kind of alter ego. And then at the same time, you have another group, Nikomo Kosuka, famous mercenary in other First Law novels. And you have the character of Temple. He is the most interesting of the new characters. He is a lawyer, but he's also had a million jobs in the past. He was a priest, a carpenter, forgot a couple other odd jobs, but his conscience kind of starts to catch up with him, because they're commissioned by the Union to go and root out all these rebels who are hiding out in the West, the far country they call it. And in doing so, they have to go through these towns and essentially just massacre people and torture them for the Inquisition. And Kosuka doesn't really give a fuck, because he just wants the money. And he's a really interesting character, because he is kind of a bad guy, at least now, but he just kind of realizes how the world is, and he just rolls with it. But Temple, his conscience kind of catches up, and he abandons them. Ends up finding Carl Shivers, who is, you know, the Northman that's in the other 2 standalone novels, who is really jaded, lost his eye. He's looking for Logan, because he's rumored to be hiding out here. Logan killed his brother years ago. So this is where you kind of get the duel that's looming in the background. So Temple leaves. He gets caught up with the Fellowship with Shy and Logan. I'm just going to call him Logan, because we know it's him. I'm not going to call him Lamb. But he has to buy his way in. He doesn't have money. Shy fronts his money, and he just has to do menial odd jobs. And this is where the book really fucking bogs down. The middle part where they're like, essentially there's like 3 or 4 chapters in a row where they're just crossing the plains and people are just talking, and they're talking about their hopes and dreams, and it's cool that you get a lot of different perspective, but it's just nothing fucking happens for so long. And they get attacked by natives, the ghosts. That's cool, but it lasts for like 2 seconds. And then Logan murders their fucking leader. And that's the end of that. And they allude to that there's a bigger war party out there, but that never ends up coming back around to being a thing. So that was a little disappointing. But then they get to Crease, which is this outlaw town. This is where it gets interesting. Oh, this is another Western trope. So they have this outlaw town, and depending on which side of the street you're on, there's 2 different groups competing for control of this town. You have the mayor, and then you have Papa Ring. Kind of suspicious name. Papa Ring is the boss of the guy who kidnapped Shy's kids. So obviously you don't like that guy. But you find out that Papa Ring didn't condone that. He was actually pissed at Greg Acantless for doing that. And Papa Ring is in the story for a very short period of time, but for being a leader of like an outlaw group, he's like actually quite reasonable, and he is a man of his word, which is really rare in these books, which is why he gets so disrespected, because he gets fucking killed, spoiler alert. So they're setting up this fight. The mayor and Papa Ring are like, okay, we've been fighting over this town for literally like 5 years. No one's budging. Let's put it all down on one bare-knuckle fight. You choose a champion, I choose a champion. Papa Ring chooses Glama Golden, who's a Northman from one of the previous... He's from the Heroes. So it was kind of cool to see him. And the mayor doesn't really have anyone, so until fucking Logan rolls up, and she's like, oh, you look like a fighter. So they set up the fight between Glama Golden and Logan. Obviously, Logan fucking wins because he goes into Bloody Nine Berserker mode, and Glama Golden realizes who he is mid-fight, and it is, like, actually terrifying seeing this, like, Glama Golden is, like, this amazing fighter, and he's also a pretty good guy. He has a conversation with Shy before the fight, and Shy is like, oh, this guy's, like, kind of reasonable, and this is, like, a last job and he's done, and he's trying to leave. And then Logan fucking brutally kills him. And it really makes you realize, it's like, what side am I cheering for here? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't really want... Like, you feel bad for Logan, but man, it's tough when he just does these terrible things. So, anyways, Papa Ring ends up getting hanged. Poor guy. And the mayor takes over the town. And... it looks like they're kind of waiting for Greg Acantless to come back, because the dragon people, no one really knows where they live. They know they're in the mountains, but like, you need to try to figure it out. And they're waiting for Cantless to come back. Before that, Temple and Shy get really drunk and fuck, obviously, because there was sexual tension the whole ride up. Greg Acantless comes in, captures her. This is all before the fight, actually. I should have kind of talked about this, but anyways, she gets captured. She ends up getting rescued by Savian, one of the old guys in the Fellowship, who is also a secret rebel. The whole that's another thing. The whole like rebel storyline, it's not given that much time, and it seems like it's supposed to be important, but it just ends up not really being that important. Anyway, Savian saves her. They capture Grega, and then, of course, Nikomo Koska and his group have to show up at the worst possible fucking time. So they show up in Crease, completely uplift the balance of power. And now Koska wants to come with them up to see the Dragon People, because the Dragon People apparently have hordes of gold. It's rumored they have hordes of gold. So they make their way past Crease into the Dragon People's territory. You meet Werdenir, who is like the leader of the Dragon People, and he is actually like, he's such a good guy, and he wants to give these kids like a better life, and he teaches them so much. and Ro and Pitt, who are Shy's brother and sister, they really actually are like totally assimilated into their culture at this point, especially Ro, because she's a fucking genius. So she speaks their language. She is like, oh, I'm part of these people now, and she really loves this guy. So when Shy comes back to save her, she actually like doesn't want to be saved anymore. She wants to be there, but it's too late. Logan murders the fuck out of Werdener. Well, they're fighting on a bridge, and Ro actually stabs Logan to try to protect him, and Logan just straight up tries to kill Ro, and Werdener saves her life, and Shy sees this whole thing happen. So it's like she needs Logan, like, bulk and physicality to help her save Ro and Pitt, but then he tries to kill her because he's in Berserker Rage mode. He doesn't think about anything. So that's a fucking big moment, and Werdener is, like, dying, and they're in this big-ass cave, and the dragon people's whole thing is they've been waiting for hundreds of years to wake the dragon. And you think it's like this metaphorical thing, but no, it's an actual dragon, but it's a mechanical dragon that Canadius built, like, centuries ago. It's his biggest fucking, his masterwork, his magnum opus. And of course, this dragon is sitting on a massive pile of gold and shit that they've stolen over the last 100 years, because what Joe Abercrombie did with the dragon people was pretty cool, because it's a clear analogy to the natives during, like, the Manifest Destiny days of the Old West, where, you know, the Caucasians were coming over and just murdering their way across the West and killing all the natives. And the dragon people are like that, right? Every time they come to try to set up shops on their mountain, they kill them all and take all their gold. And this has been happening for centuries on centuries on centuries. So you have this mechanical dragon with all this gold underneath it. And Koska sees this. He sees all the gold, and obviously he only has eyes for that. And Werdener is like, we can split it, and we can give you this dragon, and you can use this dragon to literally, like, there's insane amounts of power that he's offering Koska. And Koska is like, yeah, I don't really care, man. He actually makes a really good speech, because Werdener is like, no, you don't understand what I'm offering you. And Koska's like, no, I do understand what you're offering me. I've been offered cities. I've been offered all this shit, and it just never comes about in the end. He says, I've learned that one mark, or like one, you know, piece of gold, one coin, one mark is worth more than 1,000 promises. And he's kind of spitting facts there, because he's like, this gold has a value to me right now. You're offering me the promise of future power. I'm fucking 60 something. I could care less about that. And then he gets his Sergeant Friendly to just split his head open. And of course, Ro is distraught now. She just saw her second father figure just get murdered right in front of her. And they leave, and it's so, I don't even want to say it's bittersweet. It's just bitter, because Shy is happy to have her brother and sister back, but they don't, I mean, Pitt doesn't care as much. He's just like, he wasn't as ingratiated, but Ro is really pissed. She's just like, yeah, you came to save me, but like, I didn't want to be saved, and now fucking I just had to watch, I had to be ripped away from my family not once but twice in the last like 2 months. Like, absolutely traumatic. So yeah, they go back to Kreese, and this is where I guess the rebel storyline kind of kicks in again, because the Inquisitor who's working with Koska is like, you were supposed to bring me the rebel leader, and you haven't. And the mayor is like, hey, he's right there. Turns out it's Savian. He's the rebel leader. And so they start torturing him, and Ro, Pitt, Lamb, or Logan, and Shy are heading back home because they've accomplished their goal. They have the kids back. But Shy feels really bad about it, because she's like, man, are we really going to leave Savian? Like, he saved my life. Are we going to just let him get tortured? And so Logan and Shy go back to save him. And this is where you have, like, the whole Alamo scene, which is really cool. Where you have Koska's whole mercenary group surrounding the building. And Logan is just murdering anyone that comes in. And Savian is up top shooting people. And Koska's losing so many men, and because the Inquisitor that he's working for wants him to take Savian in alive, but Koska's like, fuck that. All my men are getting massacred, so he just literally blows this shit out of the roof of the building, turns Savian into a puddle. That's another thing about these standalones. I'm kind of sidetracking here, but you get to see the technology moving forward. So Majud, who is the leader of the fellowship that they were traveling with to Kreese, the whole reason why he wanted to go to Kreese is to meet up with his business partner Kernsbick, who has invented this portable forge, and they use that portable forge to just literally make anything. And at this point in the town of Kreese, over the month that they're there, they build up this massive factory, and you get to see that moving forward. But anywho, so cannons are like new technology, so they use that to blow the shit out of the building. Logan is still left alive because while this is all happening, Shai and Temple steal all the gold that they stole from the dragon people and just start running away with it. And they stampede all their horses so they can't chase them. But you do have a couple guys that end up chasing them, and then you have that kind of like Wells Fargo bank heist with horses moving. Like, that's a cool scene too. But that doesn't go well. They end up crashing. They're about to get executed by one of Koska's lieutenants. But then the rebels show up. Turns out the rebel leader wasn't Savian, but it was actually Savian's niece, who I didn't really mention her before, but she's like really low-key. She's just like a medic. She helps save Temple when he first gets fished out of that river early on. And they take all the gold. And then they're like, well, this gold's been now stolen 3 times in the last like couple days. They don't really have anything, but they're like, hey, I guess we tried to save Savian and it didn't work, but the gold ended up going to the rebels, so it kind of went to the right place. They go back to Kreese, and Koska catches up with them, but they don't have the gold anymore, so they can't really... So they really don't have anything to bargain with anymore. And Koska's pissed. And this is where you have like a really great scene where there's this actor that's traveling with them the whole time. And he keeps saying like, oh, my final performance, like I still have one good performance left in me. And he dresses himself up in this armor and pretends to be the leader of the Old Empire, which is the kind of the empire that's in between the Union and like the Old West area that they're in right now is in between this Old Empire and the Union. Koska is working for the Union, the Inquisitors are working for the Union, and they don't want to start a war. So because they think that this guy is the leader of the Old Empire, and they've signed a contract that brings the town of Kreese into the Old Empire, they can't fuck with them anymore because they don't want to risk starting a massive scale war. So they leave, and actually they arrest Koska. Koska's own men arrest him under the orders of the Inquisitor, because Koska wants to fuck them up anyway. He doesn't care about legality. And so they wiggle their way out of that yet again, and they're on their way home now. But somehow Koska escapes. They find him on this old farmstead, and they have these kids taken hostage. And this is where you kind of really do see the downfall of Koska, because he is a great character, but he's also just like, greed is his only thing, and that gold was supposed to be his like retirement. So he's just really pissed that he keeps getting shafted no matter what, and he won't have it anymore. So he's asking them like, where's my fucking gold? And they're like, dude, we don't have it. And he's clearly on edge. And Swarbeck, a character I didn't mention until right now. So Swarbeck is a writer, and he's been following Koska for years, and he's writing down all his exploits. He plans to write a full-length novel on him. He finally he does the right thing. He can see Koska is just off the deep end, and he just stabs him through the back. And that's the end of Nikoma Koska, and it's kind of a sad ending for him. But it did need to happen because he just... It's like blood begets blood, and he just couldn't let his greed go, and it got the better of him. And now we get to the end of the book, but now I guess I can start getting to my gripes about Logan. Because right at the end of the book, Call Shivers shows back up, finds Logan, and is like, we're going to settle this score. And Logan's like, all right, this is it. They start having this, they're about to have this high noon duel, standing in the middle of the street. And Call realizes that Logan kind of has a family now. He has Ro, Pitt, and Shy, and he's like, you know what? This guy's kind of doing the right thing, and he's leaving his past behind. You know what? Fuck it. I'm not going to fight you. Bye. And honestly, that was really fucking disappointing. I get it's like such a big moment for Call. It's a big character moment for him to realize, like, I'm just going to end this circle of violence and grudgery right now. But then Logan immediately packs his shit up and is like, I have to leave. And Shy is like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, this guy just let you go. And by the way, Ro wanted Call Shivers to kill Logan because Logan killed Werdener, her father figure. Because Logan, he literally can't do it. He just can't have this nice life. He just has to keep going after violence. And it's like, what was the fucking point? Like, what was the point of him being in this story? Like, because it literally ended the same way it ended in the original trilogy. The original trilogy, he jumps out a window, and you don't hear about him ever again. And I was actually so happy with that. But then you bring him back for this story. It's cool to see him. He has his Berserker Rage moments. But then you wrap it all back up, and the same thing happens. And it's like... And it's funny. Shy calls him. She's like, "You're a true coward," because he's so cowardly he can't just live a good life. And I guess he says he's doing it for them because he's like, listen, like, I have a lot of enemies. Like, it's only a matter of time before the next guy comes down the road to do the same shit, and then he might kill you guys. And he's not entirely wrong, but Shy calls him out and is like, nah, man, you're full of shit. You're doing this for you. You're not doing this for us. And he doesn't really deny it. So, yeah, I have real mixed feelings about Logan being in it. I really thought he should have just left it the way it was in the original trilogy, but I guess it was cool to see him again. Overall, I just think the weakest part of this book is just the plot is... It's kind of all over the place. Like, it is a journey plot, trek across the West. It's just like a lot of it ends up being really stale. There's a lot of great character moments, as always, and the prose is great because it's Joe Abercrombie and it's funny. But it's just like the characters, which are usually his strongest point, are kind of the weak point. And I think 6.8 is fair. I enjoyed the book. I just think there's a lot of decisions that were made, especially with Logan, that I was like, you know what? He kind of just didn't need to be there. But a fair novel. Definitely, obviously worth the read. If you're into First Law, like, you'll like the book. Just the weakest of the bunch. So yeah, what am I reading next? So I'm finally going to just finish Stormlight because the 5th book's coming out in December, so I just need to just blitz through it. So I'm reading Oathbringer right now, and then I'm going to do Dawn Shard and Rhythm of War, and then I'll be caught up, and then I'll do videos on that. It kind of feels bad because I started doing this channel after I had already read Way of Kings and Words of Radiance, so I might do like a retrospective on them before I do my Oathbringer. Maybe. We'll see. I don't know. They're great books. I don't know what I can say about them that hasn't already been said, but we'll see how I feel. I'll definitely be doing one for Oathbringer, and it'll be a lot more structured. I keep saying that, but then I keep doing shit off the top of my head. But I promise this time it'll actually be structured because it's a fucking massive book. So I'm really going to have to go deep into it. It's not nearly like surface level as First Law or any other most fantasy series because it is some deep shit. But yeah, that's what I'll be doing next. So, until next time, take it easy. Keep reading.